Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lana Wilson, and I am the acting director-curator of the Mann Art Gallery here in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, in the E.A. Rawlinson Centre for the Arts. This is the second edition of our new series of Mann Art Gallery virtual programming. On Tuesdays is Art Appreciation with me, Lana, at 3 p.m. So welcome to this second installment. Last week, we were talking about themes of climate change and environmental concern in the 44th Annual Winter Festival Art Show and Sale, which is our annual members exhibition at the Mann Art Gallery. And it is still on the walls because during its last week of exhibition, the week of March the 16th, the city of Prince Albert chose to close all facilities due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and so the Mann Art Gallery closed on March the 17th. And so that means that we still have all of your beautiful artwork here on the walls in the gallery. So today we're going to look at the theme of portraits, and we have a number of portraits here on display at this period. There's some self-portraits, there's portraits of friends and family, and we also have some fantastic portraits of animals. So we're going to discuss some portrait themes. We're going to look at some of the compositional and painting techniques that the artists have been employing in these, and then as always, I'll be available to answer your questions at the end of the video. As people know, I have been the acting director-curator for the past year here at the gallery, but my normal position is as the gallery educator, and I'm an art historian, and so definitely thinking about the history of portraits over the different decades, centuries, and millennia is certainly really interesting from an art historical perspective. So on the wall behind me, you can see three of the works that we're going to begin talking about. So first of all, if we're looking at the history of portraiture, we're finding that people are making portraits thousands of years ago, more than 5,000 years ago, ancient Egypt, after that ancient Greece, certainly ancient Rome, the medieval period, throughout many different cultures, we're seeing that people want to represent and depict other people. Now, sometimes they are looking for a more realistic or naturalistic type of representation, like the piece that you see behind me right now by Diane Gilbert of Saskatoon. And sometimes they're looking for a way to represent what might be more important would be the status or position of power or wealth or some other attribute of the person, and they're not as interested in the physical recognizable features or characteristics of that person. Artists also do self-portraits on a regular basis as a way to engage in self-reflection, as a way to think about their identity and the desired projection of their identity to an audience, or to think about themselves as their own painting subject matter. And so that provides a really rich field of study and a great topic for thinking about how we want to approach the subject of portraits. When we're thinking about the painting of portraits, if it's an artist and they're doing a self-portrait, again, we're looking at identity and how the artist is choosing to reflect upon the identity that they want to convey to the world, attributes of themselves that they want to get out there. But if we're thinking about an artist who has been commissioned by a patron to paint a portrait, there could be a number of other things at play, like I mentioned before, right? Trying to convey a sense of status or importance, virtue, wealth, different things like that. And sometimes certainly the artist would be under a great deal of pressure to have that be a flattering portrait and would use deliberate symbols to help convey those things. Certainly a lot of the artists that are painting self-portraits of themselves, some of them are going to be painting flattering ones, but others you can see that they're being quite harsh on themselves. So it's kind of interesting when we're looking at a portrait, we can think about, under what circumstances was it painted? Was it painted to memorialize someone? And certainly portraits throughout history, those could be painted portraits, could be sculptures, engravings, prints. right, we didn't really see access to portraiture for a wide number of people until the camera and the development of photography. And that was really a way that large numbers of people, far more people, could access portraiture, especially as a way to memorialize family members and capture a true likeness through photography. So thinking about those different things, we can have a look at some of the portraits in the 44th Annual Winter Festival. So here is the 3 of the portraits on the wall when you first come into the gallery during the Winter Festival. And the first piece that we're looking at here, there is the full piece itself before we zoom in. This is by an artist named Jimuel Belarmino, and Jimuel is from Weyburn, but at the time that he, I believe, painted this, he was working as an intern in Swift Current. And this was the winner of the Art Placement Award for accomplishments in oil paint, sponsored by Art Placement and the gallery in Saskatoon. And so thank you very much for that sponsorship. It has been purchased, and so congratulations to Jimuel. With this piece, we see it's very reflective. This is a self-portrait, and the title is called Pause. And with this piece, we see this really dramatic chiaroscuro, this really dramatic use of light and dark. We see this strong beam of light hitting from the right side and obscuring part of his face, but our eye is really drawn to this beam of light on the side of his face, and that white part of his eye, while the rest of his face is partially obscured. A little bit of a mysterious sense. In his artist statement, Jimuel was discussing how he wanted to capture himself in a self-reflective pose as a way to pause and reflect and contemplate amongst all of the different distractions of life, all of the social media distractions, the constant busy pace, and so he painted himself in this very restful pose. We can see that he's used the strategy of a triangle for the basis of his composition, and this white smock or jacket that he's wearing is creating part of this triangular shape, and our eyes are drawn to the upper part of the triangle where his eye is, and where that darkest and lightest contrasting areas are together. We're seeing that he's spending more time giving definition to the different folds on the coat, on the smock, and to different parts of his face, but we're still seeing loose brushwork there, a little bit more detail on the ear. Areas of the painting that are closer to us, he's giving more detail. We see a bit more detail on the hand. And then areas of the painting that are further away or are less important, he's painting in a looser style, right? We're not seeing a lot of definition on that foot that's a little bit further away. So a great example of a self-portrait by a very talented young artist here, and so I'll be very interested to see more works by Jimuel, and congratulations on the sale. I think this will be wonderful for the purchasers of this work to be able to reflect on this quiet moment of contemplation that's emphasized by this very strong, stable, and restful composition that Jimuel has chosen. Possibly he's working from a mirror, possibly he is working from photographs, often a combination of both, but I think a very effective and very dramatic choice to represent himself as an artist in this quiet, thoughtful moment. Moving on over here, this is the portrait by Diane Gilbert of her sister Patricia Ann. And this is oil on canvas, and this was the winner of the second place award that was sponsored by the Prince Albert Council for the Arts. And when I first met Diane on the day that she was dropping this painting off at the Winter Festival, I actually mistook it, looking at the colors used to paint the flesh, for an Iris Hauser artwork. And she laughed, and she said that in fact she and Iris Hauser were friends and had taken many classes together. And so it's interesting, as you get to know different artists, you are able to recognize some of the tips or techniques or colorways that they use. within their work. And so I think this is an absolutely lovely portrait of her sister, right? A way to commemorate her sister and talk about the importance of family. And so here we see that she's painting more details, and she's really giving us fantastic gradations of color in the skin, and we're seeing details in the eyes and the face and the hair. And so the gaze here, unlike Jimuel's, where he's gazing out at the viewer, we are seeing a little bit of a gaze downcast into the right in Patricia Ann here. And so we see these really detailed lines around the eyes, the expression of the slightly furrowed brow, the shape of the mouth. We get the sense that, right, this is a very close likeness. And in fact, Diane does resemble her sister quite a bit when I saw her standing beside this artwork. For the skin color here, she's using peaches, and she's using some orange and pink tones with some whites and some yellows, and she's capturing the shadows with very well with her brush here, and beautiful highlights on the hair. If we're looking back, and we're trying to get a sense of the identity here, right? Her sister's smiling, this restful pose. We get a sense of this sweet, maybe wistful smile. We get a sense of who this person is based on her clothing. And I love the way that this background area, these plants, are merging into her dress, and that's giving a great sense of integration between the sitter of the portrait here, the subject, and the background. We see a little bit more of the plants here, helping to echo the shapes and the colors in the dress. Great use of color here. A solid, very dramatic blue background, this ultramarine color of background, is helping to bring out the color of her eyes and is helping to bring out the color of the dress. It's also working very well as a complementary color with those peachy skin tones for this woman, right? We think about blues offsetting oranges and some of those pinks and roses. And so a great choice here so that our eye is deliberately drawn to her eyes, to her face, and then we get a sense of her personality through the pose with the resting hands, the sweet smile, and being seated gently on the bench. So wonderful sense of her love for her sister in the care and attention and detail and time that she's spent on the portrait, and the way that she's sitting. We get that great sense of perhaps a sense of her sister's personality. Over here, this is, I recognize the artist here right away, perhaps you will too. This is Carol Wylie, and the piece is called Teresa's Red Boots. And many people from Saskatoon and also the Prince Albert area will recognize that this is a portrait of Teresa Gagne, who is a Saskatoon artist who does painting and ceramic artworks, among other things. And Carol has done a wide range of portraits. It's one of the things that she's best known for. And she's giving a sense of Teresa's personality through the red boots, right? But that's not all we're seeing. Certainly they are standing out, but Carol has done a fantastic job of providing color unity. She's not only painted the red boots alone by themselves, she's made sure that she is also spreading that same color of red throughout Teresa's clothing, and to some degree also in some of the shadows that we see, right? She's creating that unity of color in her work. And we see this pink area in the background, and different brown shapes are really setting off. They're creating interest in the background, and that pink color is also being echoed both in Teresa's hair and then also in her skin. And so great use of color there, and ways of creating a background that is interesting, but is also not detracting from the main subject of the picture, which of course is Teresa, her boots, and her face. And this wonderfully confident, quiet, strong expression on Teresa's face here. One of the things I notice with Carol's work is the use of purples and blues in the shadows especially. And you see that Carol's bringing those colors into Teresa's hair as well, right? She's not just restricting it to the different shades in her face. And that's fantastic, right? We are often told when we're painting shadows and we're trying to create a sense of depth in artwork that we shouldn't think of shadows as being black, right? There's always some color in them somewhere. And so using these cooler colors that are contrasting with some of the pinks and flesh tones, these paler Caucasian flesh tones that Carol's using, we get a wonderful sense of this as a painterly portrait. We see some loose brush strokes around, but that are still able to give a great sense of modeling and definition to Teresa's face. If we're looking at the overall composition here as well, right, we get this sense of restfulness. We see again, right, this very strong triangular composition, almost rectangular, right, grounded by the red boots here. And so the boots certainly do attract our eye, but that calm, bold, confident gaze of Teresa's eyes looking out at us is definitely, really striking with this work. And I love that slightly crooked smile and the tilt of her head, right? Really helps to give a sense of the personality and identity of this particular subject. So I hope that provides a little bit of interest in thinking about different ways that people are representing themselves, their friends, their loved ones and family throughout the different works that we have on display here. I will show you really quickly, before we go and before I run out of battery power, a couple of really unique portraits in the show. This piece here is a photograph by Ellie Degranges, and she is a photography artist. This is called Blooming Personality Number 3, A Combat. And Ellie is currently working on a series where she is looking for plants and thinking about anthropomorphizing them, thinking about how they speak to her and how they can be thought of as representing humans' personality traits. And so the idea that this is a combative personality, the idea that this flower looks like it's a person putting up their dukes, right? Having boxing gloves or making a fist is quite lovely and is just part of her larger series. So I really enjoyed the fact that this was placed in close proximity to those 3 portraits on the wall. Of course, with this discussion in the Winter Festival, how could we forget Kim Morrall's fantastic portrait here, not necessarily about herself, but perhaps our relation to her. And this piece is called So That I May See, and it's mixed media. And so on the back, this is actually where she has her eyes. So we have this great shadow. And so really, really fascinating. And around the outside of the work, she has inscribed this quote from Julius Caesar, from Shakespeare's play. Of course, Kim is really active in our drama community here as both a director and an actress. And she was telling me about the quote, referencing the idea that, the person who's speaking is saying, you might not recognize your own worth, but let my words reflect back to you your value. And the idea that, maybe Kim is inviting us to see through her eyes or to kind of meet her eyes in this mirrored piece. And so it is deliberately hung at approximately eye height, and it's a really unique piece with adhering that large printed piece of paper to the glass. And so it's quite striking as it's floating here in the gallery. So a great way to insert herself into the piece and to think about issues of meeting someone's eye or seeing ourselves reflected back from someone and our relationships with each other. So thank you so much, Kim, for this really unique piece. Continuing on, we have a fantastic portrait of her grandfather. This is by Trudy Ahenecue, And last year, Trudy submitted to Winter Festival a portrait of her grandmother. And this year, she has submitted a piece called Mushum, right? Grandfather. And you see the Cree word up in the corner, right? Nimush, right? My grandfather. And the bridge in the background. And so, right, it's that smile, the suit, the tie. We see this strong, confident man with these strong cheekbones and these smiling eyes, and a great sense of, not necessarily paying too much time and attention to all of the nuances of the facial details, but providing enough that we get a sense of structure, and that the piece has this integrated sense of her talking about her connection to her grandfather, but the piece isn't solely about a complete detailed portrait of him, but she's putting him in the context here with the bridge, with the area, and then referencing her culture with the words in the background. So a really lovely piece, and very much a companion piece to the grandmother piece that she submitted last year. On this side of the gallery, of course, we're seeing Pat Bliss, and Pat almost always has horses in his works. Anyone from around here who knows Pat will know of his love of horses and how they're a frequent subject. And so what we all really enjoyed about this piece, which is called Reflecting, is that, of course, it is a self-portrait. As you look into his eyes, in the sunglasses there, you see the horses. And as you look in the reflection of the vehicle, that's where you see the horses. So again, right, Pat is giving us a sense of his personality, right? He's got the shades, he's got his hat, he's got his bandana, his button-down shirt, he's in front of his truck, he's out on the land, and he's with his beloved horses. And so he's showing us things that he loves, and giving us a sense of his place and this moment in his life. So great sense of connection, and even if you don't know Pat, I think you can really get that from his work with how he's chosen to use those symbols and aspects of his life. And then finally, before we go, wonderful portraits of beloved animals. Do you see? This is our cat wall. I have a cat. I think they're a great subject matter. Over here we have Bridget Aitken, and this piece is called Sur la table, right? French, on the table. And it's a wonderful portrait. Look at the expression on the cat's face here. Cat does not care that she is on the table. This is her place, right? She's sprawled there. We have this great sense of body language of the cat, right? And wonderful way that the background are these flowers. Is that like wallpaper, or maybe a design that's inspired by an Afghan? We see this floral image, but really serves to kind of present an all-over background print that really sets off the white cat, right? It's a busy background to help offset the white cat. And you see all of these different subtle color variations in the cat's fur. And this loosely painted but wonderfully evocative sense of the face and the way that Bridget is handling the brushwork here. So really love this kind of humorous, that is the cat's place, and I think that we get a sense of the personality of the cat, who might be told to get down, but there she is. Over here, this is Ellen McNeill, and this is called Pink and Blue. And then down below, this is Lilian Donahue, and it's called Waiting for Jeannie. And again, as we're looking at both of these, we're seeing the personality of these particular cats come across through the body language, and we're seeing different ways to treat a background, right? We've still got patterning going on here to create a nice dark contrast with the coat of the cat, and as we get closer, we see some brushwork. Still fairly loose here, but we definitely get a sense of definition in the fur. And then the closer areas of the cat have more definition. we get this wonderful sense of fur and that upturned chin and the luminescence in the eyes, right? That reflection in the eyes. And then again, a sense of cat investigating the teapot and sitting in a warm, sunny spot on the window. And our eyes are filling in the patterns, right? We don't have to paint every single brush stroke or have every single hair in place to get a sense of the pattern of this cat. We can enjoy the painterly quality of the work here. And again, right, we've got some great patterned background in the trees that's reflecting the patterning of the stripes in the cat's coat. And so we get this wonderful sense of light outlining this part. So really wonderful work and a great sense of the home of these particular people and how important these cats are to them. Right, what is the relationship between the artist and the subject of their portrait? Something for us to think about and a window for us to engage with the subject in the portraits. So thank you for joining me today. That's all I have. And thank you for some of your comments. I'm glad that you're enjoying. Another look for those of you who have seen these works in Winter Festival. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. I'm just reading a couple of comments here. Yes, a lot of these works do make strong statements, especially Kim Morrall's work, and incorporating that sense of compassion to, as she invites us to see ourselves through her eyes, because she is such a friendly person. So yes, thank you. I hope that this closer look does inspire you to pause and think more about these particular works. Even if you've seen a work a few times before, pausing and studying it another time will generally give you a new insight into it or help you reconnect with what initially drew you to the work. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for joining me again. And please let us know in the comments, either here on Facebook, on Instagram, or on YouTube, whether you enjoy this series and maybe suggest some of the topics that you would like to see us address as virtual programming continues. So Tuesdays is live art appreciation with me, Lana. On Wednesdays, we have an art activity brought to you by our acting educator, Danielle Castle. And then on Thursdays, we have Secrets of the Vault, where we look at the permanent collection with Tia Furstenberg, our registrar. And then on Friday, we're presenting a sketch or art journal theme for you to take part in. And then we're posting the results of those themes on Monday. So thank you for joining us. And again, do let us know if you would like to see this virtual series continue while the gallery is closed and we're all staying at home and keeping safe during COVID-19. Thank you for watching and take care.